I am live according to YouTube. Hi again, everyone. It's me, Gordon Causey. You all know me. Everyone here who's already shown up on the live chat. Goodness, I love this. I've already got Anna Monarchy and Daniel Copeman. Daniel Copeman de la Ville de Montréal, my friend from Montreal, and Monarchy, who's also here in Ontario. I've got, you guys are amazing, and I so much appreciate the live chat. That and the participation that goes on. It's so nice to know that I'm not just speaking into the void. Candy, of course, always is here because she heard me say those magic words. Hi, everyone, I'm live, or whatever I say. It doesn't matter what words I use. She knows the tone and she knows what's coming. What? You going to get something? Are you going to get something? You're coming up? You're coming up? You can see it there. All right. Oh, let me scroll up. Candy, stop bugging me. All right, let's give her a treat so that she's taken care of. Sit, shake a paw, lay down, speak. Good, get up here. Good. So many things to talk about tonight. A thought that's been ruminating, has been kicking around the back of my brain with respect to the rail shutdown, but so much more is happening. It's almost like the rail shutdown, you almost want to put it in the category of a distraction. But I don't think it is, because I see this as being real and huge, massively huge. And the problems we could be facing, not on Monday, not Tuesday, but by the end of the week and into next week, things could be really bad in this country. We could very well be under boil water advisories because our water treatment facilities will not be getting the chlorine and other chemicals they need to properly treat and keep our water supply safe. And it's occurred to me now, was this by design? Is this what they call a manufactured crisis? It's long been stated by many people smarter than me that in order to effect genuine, true, real systemic change in anything, that absent a crisis, you can't get radical change done without a crisis. Because human nature, we are human beings, we are resistant to change. We don't want to change, and so we muddle through. But it's only in the presence of disaster that truly radical change can take place. And we've had this situation with the rail companies. It's been going on for over a year. I've been doing some more reading, some more research, some more study, learning about what led to this situation, this unbelievable situation that we're in, that has still not been resolved. The rail lines are not operating. They didn't operate Thursday. They didn't operate today. Our labor minister, the one who enacted, or rather called on the Canadian Industrial Review Board to invoke binding arbitration on the railways and the union. This has been unfolding for over a year. What happened was the Canadian Pacific Kansas City rail line, their contract with the Teamsters expired a year or so ago, and then it was just extended by this Industrial Review Board. They extended the contract that Kansas City, or Canadian Pacific Kansas City, was operating under, so that we had this perfect storm of both of Canada's major rail lines coming to the bargaining table at the same time, and have put us in this situation where we're facing a catastrophe in this country. And sadly, this is not the only catastrophe on the horizon. I've talked about this many times. We could be hit from so many different sides that it's going to overwhelm us. What's being written? Daniel Copeman is writing, and these are interesting words, the start of it. Welcome to the grand illusion. Come on in and see what's happening. Pay the price. Get your tickets for the show. Hey, very, very salient comments there, Daniel. It almost feels a little like a theater show that we're watching, and sadly, it's real. Boil water advisories are very likely in the cards, because we cannot snap and just start the rail lines back up. Canadian National, their workers have the union representing those Canadian national workers have notified the union that as of Monday, I think it's at 10 a.m. Eastern time, they will be in a legal strike position, and they have served notification that we are on strike. And Canadian Pacific Kansas City has not ended the lockout of its workers. And that's basically 100% of the rail traffic in this country shut down. Shut down Thursday, shut down Friday. It's going to be shut down over the weekend. It's going to be shut down on Monday. When McKinnon, our labor minister, was asked how long until the rail lines open back up, the press was hammering him on this question. All he would say is within days, plural, D-A-Y-S. Not within a day, not within two days, not within, we don't know. It's an indeterminate number of days greater than 2 or more. And I cannot see it being resolved quickly. I had someone on my Facebook feed, they just put up a message and they said, hey, it's easily, it can be dealt with very easily. They just need to enact back to work legislation. And that is true. However, you don't just enact back to work legislation. It takes time for that to happen. And the first thing that needs to happen is Parliament. A back to work legislation requires an act of Parliament, and our Parliament right now is not in session. Our idiot Prime Minister and all of the sitting MPs and all the aides, everyone that runs our Parliament is on vacation right now. They've been on vacation since May or June. It's like they get a longer vacation than students do. And Trudeau does, he doesn't want to end his vacation. He's on holiday and he wants to stay on holiday. So he's not recalling the legislature. If he did, if on Monday he came out and he said, all right, I'm recalling the legislature and we're going to reopen Parliament, that would still take a week. It would take at least a week for all the MPs to get back to Ottawa so that Parliament could sit. You need the Speaker, you need the pages, you need the aides, you need the bureaucrats that all run Parliament. Everyone has to get back to Ottawa, coming from Yukon and Northwest Territories and Nunavut and everywhere else. It would take a week to get Parliament running again. And then they would have to draft back to work legislation. Then that legislation would have to be debated and passed. It could go very fast if there was unanimous party support, if the Liberals, NDP, Conservatives, Bloc, and Green Party all gave unanimous consent to fast tracking it through the legislature, then it could be done in a day or two. But we have Jagmeet Singh and the NDP who are beholden to the Teamsters and other organized labor, and they are not going to abrogate. They're not going to do something that would circumvent the collective bargaining process. That would be biting the hand that feeds them. They get a lot of their funding for the NDP comes from organized labor, comes from the Teamsters and the Canadian Auto Workers and every other union. They all funnel money into the NDP. So the NDP is not going to support back to work legislation. So now we're looking at probably a week or more long process before that type of legislation could be enacted. Meanwhile, Canadians are going to be under boil water advisories and that's just one example. There's $1 billion worth of goods, more than $1 billion worth of goods that travels each and every day over the rail lines in Canada. That is going to destroy the small business sector worse than what COVID ever did. Because are they going to come out with CERB? The Emergency Relief Benefit Plan? Are there going to be government programs to, these rail lines, that have market capitalizations in the hundreds of billions of dollars? Are they going to subsidize the small business sector who can't run their machines, who can't get their products to market, who are going to have to be laying off workers? This is bad. Let me catch up on what's being written. Anna Monarchy writes, maybe add iodine and something silver to the water, or charcoal if you don't mind the taste, which I read keeps water from going stagnant. It's going to be bad. It is going to be bad. Are people going to go out and buy water purification systems, reverse osmosis and all this stuff? Where would you get the equipment? Probably travels by rail. This is going to get bad. And Monarchy says tickets, in reference to the earlier comment by Daniel about, get your tickets. And Monarchy is saying, I'd rather hop the fence. Daniel says Sawyer water filter will remove 99.9% of everything. There are these water filtration systems and everything, but come on. We're talking about a country of close to around 40 million people. Some areas are very remote. They don't, if you're living up in Great Slave Lake, if you're living in Temiskaming, if you're living in Timmins, if you're living in Nunavut, how available are these things? We're going to see grocery stores are going to get hammered. It hasn't happened yet. I think I was watching a news report earlier today, CBC News, and I think I'm gonna share this. And you should see the host and the individual being interviewed. They're laughing about it. And this is where I talk about how the government, or rather the media, programs people what to believe, what to think, and how to feel. And here you watch the coverage and the manner in which they cover it. It's like, don't worry, be happy. Ha, 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 joke, joke, joke. I've got a few videos, a couple videos to share. Yeah, here it is. Let me get my my share function going. This is CBC News. And that I don't know if that came across on my live, but what was I was just sharing is another video that I'm going to share with you about new restrictions coming at the airports and for cargo and for people traveling. They're bringing in new monkeypox restrictions geared toward preventing the spread of monkeypox. We've got that on the horizon. We've got a rail shutdown in this country. We've got monkeypox and new restrictions that just within the last 24 hours, which are being imposed on airports all around the world. And then we have a major blow up. Let me, I'm all over the place right now, and I know that, and I apologize. Let me get this going. Okay, share. I'm going to be sharing. This is CBC News government. This is Canadian government newscast. Let me see. It is sharing. Okay, let's hit it.
Representing more than 9,000 workers has made two big calls, even as Canada's Industrial Relations Board considers the constitutionality of the ministerial directive, sending the matter to binding arbitration. Stay with me, folks. Our Montreal reporter Vanessa Lee has confirmed that the union has now issued a 72-hour strike notice to Canadian National, while the national president has now declared workers at the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Company to be officially on strike. Now, here he is speaking at a rally in Calgary this last hour.
Well, things are moving quite rapidly. I understand that this morning our group at C signified the 72 hours notice for a strike at CN. So we will.
Kind of looks like Doug Ford's French cousin, doesn't it? I'm going to fast forward and get to the part where she's interviewing another talking head, and the two of them are laughing about what's going on. So we'll leave the Francois Laporte, who's the president of Teamsters Canada. The Doug Ford looks like a slightly younger, perhaps a little less pudgy version of our premier in this province. Let's see where. Let's see. Okay, let's see what happens here.
Peter Armstrong is here with me in studio. He's going to help us break down the impact of this ongoing strike. And of course, in Ottawa, we've got CBC's Janice McGregor with political reaction to the Teamsters Union 72-hour strike notice. Janice, I'd really like to start with you because I understand you've got some clarity to offer us at this point. What have you got?
I don't know if I'd say clarity.
Yes, you got.
Explain.
Look at them laughing. Oh my gosh. I have some clarity. This is unbelievable from a national news network, and we're dealing with an issue as serious as something that could lead to boil water advisories for the entire country. And we got these two broads laughing like, they're at a baseball or a hockey game or a kid's soccer match or something. She does take on a serious tone later. But I'm telling you right now, in my opinion, this is orchestrated. This is by design. This is the programming they give. They don't want you to be worried about this. They want you whistling past the graveyard. Now listen to what they have to say.
Are the trains running as normal? No. Does Janice know when the trains are going to be running normally again?
That's clear.
Also,
It's
no.
clear.
And for the kind of people that Peter is, going to tell us about shortly, is that really all that matters right now? Probably. Okay. Nevertheless, pull up a chair, grab a drink. Let's go through this. State of play at this hour. There is a virtual meeting going on at the Industrial Relations Board because yesterday Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon referred this work stoppage to their jurisdiction to take a look at perhaps a binding arbitration process that would sort out what should be in these collective agreements between both railways and their respective Teamsters unions. We do not yet know how things are going behind closed doors at those talks. What we do know is that this is a virtual meeting. And depending on the outcome of this, we will see how all the other dominoes fall from here. Now, why do I say that? Did you ever read Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid? I'm going to guess, Peter, and we're all kind of same vintage, right? You get to a certain place.
We're back to ha, 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 laugh it up. And she's comparing it to a children's series of books about if-case scenarios. If this happens, do that. If this happens, if the other thing happens, then do another thing. Yeah, and this is ridiculous that our national news is treating such a major issue with such levity. The factual information she's sharing, as near as I can tell, is 100% bang on the money. And I'll let her talk, but she's trying to frame it, and it's being done intentionally, is to frame this as, hey, just smile, be happy, nothing to worry about. But then you listen to her words and it contradicts her tone.
And it says, if this happens, go to this page. If this happens, go to this page. So the first thing, if they say that binding arbitration proceeds, right? If what the minister asked for yesterday is what happens at the IRB today, this is what we know. That referral from the minister included both the lockout at the CPKC union and the lockout at CN, and also, and this is where the clarification sort of has come, also is considering the strike notice that the Teamsters had given for just one of those two railways, CPKC. If the IRB says that the binding arbitration process is going to sort of prevent any further stoppages of work on the railways with respect to those three things, that would be what the minister hoped would resolve this. However, will the union agree to be bound by that? And would it be legal for it to refuse to be bound by that? This brings us to, flip some pages here, another part of the process that we have to consider, because we know from the statements of the union, again this morning, that they believe that their charter rights are violated by this process, whereby the minister has referred all this to binding arbitration instead of...
I'm going to stop my share right now. It's just so annoying for me to even try. I listened to this already once. I don't want to listen to it again. You can look for it yourself. You can find it on YouTube here. Teamsters serve CN Rail with 72-hour strike notice. Confirms CPKC workers are already on strike. Canadian Pacific Kansas is already in a legal strike position, and they are already on strike. The Canadian National Rail workers were not in a legal strike position, and they will not be in a legal strike position until Monday at, I believe it's 10 a.m. So we are heading into the soup, to use that old tired expression. Let me catch up on what's being written. I hope you're paying attention, because things are going to get bad because of this rail strike. But it's not the only thing. And that's the scary element to all of this, is that it's not the only thing happening in the world. It's kind of what Canadians, if your eyes are open and you're paying attention, the back to work legislation is not a panacea. It would take 2+ weeks before that would have an impact. And then it would take several days to get the rail system up and running again in any case. And in the meantime, what's going to happen to diesel shipments? What's going to happen to chlorine shipments for our clean water? What's going to happen to vital supplies for our hospitals, for our long-term care facilities, for goodness knows, remote northern communities that rely on shipments by rail? This is going to, and I said in my last video, people are going to die because of this. Ha 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 ha, CBC News. Let's catch up on what's being written. Yeah, Cryptomeria says they shouldn't even get summers off. They're in kindergarten, and that's what it basically is. That's what our parliament is. Everyone is under the marching orders of the leader of their party. If you're a liberal, you have to do what the prime minister's office says. If you don't, you get fired. That happened to Jody Wilson-Raybould. She was this nation's top lawyer. She was the attorney general. She was engaging in a prosecution against SNC-Lavalin, a major contributor to the Liberal Party. She refused to engage in what they refer to as a deferred prosecutorial agreement. She decided she wasn't going to give them a sweetheart deal at Trudeau's behest. And so Trudeau fired her as this nation's attorney general and eventually kicked her right out of caucus. He kicked her out of the party because she didn't play along. She was Jody Wilson-Raybould was representing the interests of Canadians who want to see our corporate sector policed in a proper manner and that they operate both legally and ethically. And she was saying, to the pressure coming from the PMO, forget it, I'm going ahead with the prosecution, and Trudeau had her fired. That is our political system. People like Jody Wilson-Raybould don't last. People with integrity do not last in our political system. We get Mr. Dress Up running this country who refuses to end his holiday so that he can keep Canadians from dying and from being under a boil water advisory. And I got to get to the point where this is orchestrated, in my opinion. This is 100% completely orchestrated. They knew this was coming. Now they've gone and they've referred it to this arm's length government body, the Industrial Review Board, Canadian Industrial Review Board. And now it's kind of like, well, it's their issue now. No, Trudeau, it was your issue. You should have had this referred to the CIRB for binding arbitration 2 or 3 weeks ago so that this process could play out before the rail lines were shut down, so that you had options. Now you're out of options. Now you're sitting on your hands waiting intentionally, so that this country's economy is going to go in the toilet because products are not going to be shipped. This is heinous. Daniel is writing, hours equals days, days, weeks, weeks, months, months, years, from 15 days to 2 years to slow the COVID curve. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Slow the curve. That, it's just a couple weeks. Oh, we'll go along. It's just a couple weeks. I don't need to be worried. And now, oh, well, it's been referred to the CIRB, so don't worry. It's like a children's book where if this happens, go to page 8. But if this happens, go to page 9. This is not a children's book. Hospitals require goods, products that are delivered by our rail system. People are going to die. People need clean water. Without clean water, people are going to die. Not everyone's going to get one of these water filtration systems. Not everyone is going to take an advanced course in chemistry to figure out what iodine, what charcoal, and what to add to the water. People are going to die. And does our government care? Well, it's not our, we referred it to the CIRB. It's we've got to let the process play out. Meanwhile, during the COVID era, we could completely shred the Constitution and our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and trash all over, the human rights of Canadian citizens under the guise of, well, we're doing it to keep you safe. And now they're, oh, well, you have to respect we have to respect the process now, even though people are going to die. Come on. I mean, this is unbelievable. It is pathetic, Cryptomeria. Anarchy writes, sitting around all day is hard work. They need a break from their breaks. Yeah. The politicians in this country, we are more or less ruled by dictate from the Prime Minister's office. And Justin Trudeau is getting his marching orders from the corporate elite, the same people who go to Davos, Switzerland every year, who meet behind closed doors, decide on the direction they want to take the world. They come up with these sustainable development goals, and they prioritized shutting down economies, bringing in a form of what they're referring to as stakeholder capitalism, but there's nothing capitalistic about it for the vast majority of the population. Instead of a free market economy, we will be in a directed economy. Adam Smith is getting thrown in the garbage. Oh, man. It is so frustrating for someone such as myself. I'm reasonably well educated, reasonably well. I'm not Jordan Peterson, and I'm not Douglas Murray, and I'm not this guy or that guy, and I'm not Noam Chomsky or anyone like that. But I've read these individuals. I've read The Wealth of Nations. I know enough to know that what we're looking at right now is absolutely absurd, what is happening. And I also am aware, I have enough knowledge of human nature to understand that for the broader population, it's just too much to take in all at once. It's almost too much for me to take in all at once, everything that's coming at us. When COVID hit, it blew my mind that they were going to try and micromanage human behavior in order to try and stop a viral pathogen. Like, that just was insanity. You cannot micromanage human behavior, and you cannot shut down the supply chain unless you want to invite the zombie apocalypse. And now we have the potential for a zombie apocalypse with the shutting down of our rail line. It is that serious. I am not being hyperbolic. The only thing is, if miraculously, somehow, within the next 2-3 days, by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, if the rail lines start operating again, I don't know. We had the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act, the old reworking of our old War Measures Act. They were willing to use those legislative tools to stop people from protesting the fact that they didn't want to take a mandatory vaccine that had not even established a long-term safety profile. I want to be careful because I think I know what got me into trouble before. But there's no 5-year safety profile on any of the COVID jabs. That's a fact. And people didn't want to have to take it. And that led to a massive protest. And to stop that protest from continuing, the government was willing to invoke the Emergency Measures Act. Would they be willing to invoke the Emergency Measures Act now to get Canada's rail lines moving again so that Canadians don't die? And I don't think they will, because I think this is a manufactured crisis. They knew it was coming, and they sat on their hands, and they've let it evolve to this point. So I'm left to draw no other conclusion than this is by design. This is the way things are scripted to go, and we are going to be in trouble. If your gas tank isn't full, fill it up. You have time. If you don't have enough non-perishable food stored up to last. And the only thing is, this kind of disruption, who knows how long it could go on. Do you need a month's worth of food? Do you need a couple weeks? Do you need 3 months? I don't know. And we're coming up to winter. And there are people in this country who rely on heating oil to keep. Oh, my dog. Oh, Candy, shut up. Sorry. Oh, Sorry about this. It's just, hey, Candy, come here. It's hard for me to concentrate with her. Get over here. Get in there. Hey. She knows when she's in trouble and she runs away. Hey, Candy. You want to be in trouble? Sit. Hey. Put her in there.
Yeah, by the way, can I go shopping with you tomorrow?
Yes. And now, lots of noise going on in the house. You get to bed. Sorry about this little pause. Good work, big guy. Anyway, one day I'll let him come on, my big guy. And Daniel Copeman is writing, it's all about destroying Canada, WEF, and the WHO, the World Health Organization. I'm not going to contradict that statement. It's all about transitioning us from individual nation states into a global system. And Daniel Copeman goes on to write, remember the story by Aesop about the ant and the grasshopper? We were just out for a walk today, and I was telling that same story to my guy. I was telling him about that tale about the ant and the grasshopper hopping around. Why are you working so hard, ant? Why are you storing up for the winter? We were seeing a lot of squirrels, and he was talking about how the squirrels seem really active. I say, hey, the acorns and the seeds and everything's on the ground right now, and the squirrels are storing it up, putting in their little cubby holes inside of trees and their nests, so that when the winter months come and the snow's on the ground and they can't find food lying around, they've got a place to go. I chose to be the ant, as many others did. To keeping our head in the sand and pretending nothing is happening won't make it disappear. Absolutely, Daniel. I figure we're good for about 2-3 months, but how far can you go? How far can you go? How much storage capacity do you have? If you can fill your freezer, but what happens if something happens to the electrical grid for a protracted period of time? Does the electrical grid rely on components and things that are shipped by rail or internet connectivity? Can internet connectivity be maintained if replacement parts and components that are transited by rail, if they're not being shipped? Are we going to see breakdowns in water, electricity, internet connectivity, goodness knows what else? It is, I said it before, I'll say it again, that's the rail lines in this country are almost, you can liken them to the blood vessels of a human being. And if the blood isn't circulating, the patient dies. And if our rail lines are not operating, our economy dies. And if the economy dies, people die. Anyway. And Marky said, I often say that my station has no production values, and it doesn't. It's a cheap curtain in behind me, just a light overhead, just my inboard laptop's camera and microphone. But she's saying that I sound like the news. It's not the news like I ever hear it. The news like I just showed with CBC News. Oh, that annoys me. I find CBC is such trash journalism. And it's unbelievable that not only is it trash journalism, but Canadians pay for it in terms of our, this is what our tax dollars give us in terms of news. Is it any wonder that Canadians are calling for the CBC to be completely defunded and shut down? We don't need to be lied to anymore. We don't need to pay to be lied to. Anyway, sleepy sheep are easier to control. That's Daniel. And he's also saying the news is no longer the news. They are opinion shows with a bit of information. And that's the thing. There is some information in there in that CBC News article. They're not, they've got their marching orders, and the government is going to be hiding behind the cover of this Canadian Industrial Relationship Board and saying, well, we have to let the process work its way out. Well, why didn't you let the process work its way out? And why didn't you go out and meet with the protesters who were in Ottawa during the trucker convoy? Why did you have to invoke draconian measures to end that? And you're not willing to invoke the same type of measures now to save the lives of Canadians and to keep the economy rolling. We've got a horrible government in place, but it's by design. Justin Trudeau does not work for you or me or for Canadians. He's beholden to global corporate interests. That's who he's carrying the ball for. They're the ones who put him into power. They're the ones who own the media outlets that build him up. They could take him down so easily. No other politician could have survived lying about how many times he put blackface on. But Trudeau can have blackface on. It's been proven he's done it 3 times, and he is on record as saying that he has done it so much that he can't actually put a number on it. We know about 3, and he's not willing to say, well, it was only those 3. He said he doesn't know how many times he did it. That's the Prime Minister of Canada. If Pierre Poilievre, if any other politician, if Maxime Bernier was found to have paraded around in blackface 3 times, they would just destroy him over it. But Trudeau gets a pass by our media. The media tells us we're not to worry about it. Don't be concerned. Not a major issue, because it's their buddy. It's their puppet. It's frustrating. And Daniel Copeland is writing all caps, nothing happening is by mistake. It is all planned. I have the Happy Bus Rail fan here saying, well, Carrie Miller has shown up. The commies are desperate and playing dirty. They always have. And Carrie says, hi to everyone. Hi back. Anna Monarchy writes, the administration of my county, Simcoe, has signed on to the 15-minute city agenda, as have so many others. Edmonton's a big one too. I've tried calling the local MP, Terry Fodal, to see if he supports or opposes it, but he is never available. Big surprise, surprise. Even Pierre Poilievre was asked to comment on the UN's SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and he pretended to not know what they were. Oh, I'd never heard of that. Give me a break, Pierre. You know exactly what they are. And if you don't, then you're incompetent and you shouldn't be in the position you're in. Any viable political party is owned. Any viable candidate for the office of the Prime Minister of Canada is owned, sadly. It's almost getting to the point where Canadians are going to start to wake up and realize we're on our own and bring it back to faith. They're owned, but we need to be owned by the King. We need to bow down to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the name to which every tongue will confess and the name to which every knee will bow, because this world is beastly and it is getting beastlier. I was talking, so, that's the rails situation, and they knew this was coming. And it reminds me somewhat of the COVID era. It reminds me somewhat of the COVID era when at the beginning, January, February of 2020, even in early March, Canadians were being told, don't worry, don't be overly concerned. Yes, it's an issue, but things are well in hand. That was even Theresa Tam, our chief medical officer of health in this country, was telling Canadians not to be overly concerned. And then within a matter from, that was at the beginning of March. And by the middle of March, it was, don't go outside or we're going to fine you. Don't go outside unless you have to walk your dog. And even then, just go out just to walk the dog and come right back in, because you've got a shelter in place. Stay home, stay safe. Talk about how quickly things changed. And that's what it's reminding me of now. What are they going to do? Are we going to be looking at gas rationing? Are we going to be looking at rationing like they've had during World War I and World War II, where Canadians pulled together to support the war effort and there was rationing of all manner of things? Could that kind of thing happen? Could they use this as an excuse to introduce the Universal Basic Income, UBC? And of course, the central bank digital currency, which will allow the government to track every single transaction, no matter how big or small. You want to give your kid $5 or a grandchild $5. Well, that's now an electronic transaction that can be surveilled by Big Brother government. This is the type of system they want to fold out over the next 5 or so years. It's called Agenda 2030 for a reason, and 5 years is a long time. 2020 seems like ages ago. It was only 4 years ago. We've still got 5 years in front of us before we hit the year 2030, what the Agenda 2030 is named after. Catching up. Whale oil has shown up. Good to see you as always. Gordon, when was the last significant national rail strike and how did that one go? There was one back in, I think it was 2019, but this is the first time there has ever been a rail strike that has involved both our national carriers, both CN and CP, at the same time. And that was orchestrated because CPKC's collective bargaining agreement expired a year or so ago. And then this industrial review board extended their contracts so that CNs and CPs would both be expiring at the same time, and they're both represented by the same union. You don't think this was orchestrated? And then the corporate sector, the CN and the CPs, they want to force workers to be forced into relocating temporarily to places where there are labor shortages. You know, I'm a yard worker in Sudbury. My kids go to school here. They play hockey, baseball. We're part of the community. Well, now we're moving you for the next 8 months and you're going to go to Lethbridge, Alberta because we have a shortage there. Say goodbye to your wife and kids. Come on. But that's what they want to introduce into the collective bargaining agreement. And they also want to take away rest provisions where there are stipulations as to how long an individual has from the time they finish work until they have to get up and start work again. And even about, you know, when a worker is forced to lay over and stay in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and has to spend 2 nights in a hotel away from their family, do they get paid, compensated for their time? No, they don't want to compensate them for their time. These are multi-billion-dollar corporations stepping all over the rights of individual workers. And I have a great deal of sympathy for the rail workers, but my sympathy does not extend so far as to want to see this country's rail lines completely shut down so that it cripples the Canadian economy. And that's understating things. It'd be worse than crippling the economy. We're talking about businesses closing down and never opening up again. But the government didn't care about that when they forced small businesses to close. They allowed Amazon warehouses to stay open, even after hundreds of cases of COVID. You know, I said it before, if a nail salon had 1 case, people were screaming, oh my God, we got to shut them down. But Amazon and their warehouse, their fulfillment centers can have hundreds of cases. Well, that's okay. And if you wanted to go to church, you had to write down your name and phone number and address, and they wanted to contact trace. But if you went to Costco or Walmart or any of the big boys, well, no, we're not contact tracing there. We're not going to place restrictions on the big corporate sector. We're only going to hammer the little guy, the small independent businesses. We're going to drive them into bankruptcy. But the big boys, they're going to make more. The Amazons are going to make their profit margins are going to explode, and the Weston family and the Costco's and the Walton family. You know, the rich get richer, the poor get not get poorer, the poor get wiped out. And this is the world we're living in. Kerry is writing the propaganda machine at its finest. And that's what we put up whenever we listen to the mainstream media. And unless you're looking at it through a Christian lens and being guided by biblical truths, you're going to have a hard time navigating this world. And even with scripture, and even with Jesus residing within you, the enemy is so active and at work and trying to deceive and trying to cloud your judgment. It's still difficult. It's still challenging. Daniel writes, Justin Trudeau is not a man. A man faces his detractors. Oh, I got COVID. I can't come out again. That's our prime minister. Cryptomeria is writing whale oil beef to whale oil beef. the RCMP was invented to be strike breakers. I don't know on any recent ones, but they were violent during the day. Yeah, I was being asked about the different rail strikes. And then it was all the way back in like 2005 or 6 before the last one. So there was one around 2018, 19, and it was one of CN or CP. It was one of the two. And then you have to go all the way back 2005 or 6 before the previous one. But we've never been in a situation where both CN and CP, which is 99.99999% of the rail traffic in this country, it's shut down. And Monday, things are going to be bad after 10 a.m. when CN is in a legal strike position. And I can see the CIRB, who knows who's in charge of that place, what Masonic little political appointee is there, and who they're beholden to, and what agenda they're going to be following. But I am fairly certain it's not going to, I'm confident in saying it's not going to be in the best interest of Canadians what's going to unfold. And monarchy, Daniel writes, my favorite, Jesus is king. Get to know your king, plebs. He can save us all. Jesus laid down his life for you and for me. You think Trudeau would lay down his life for you? You think Donald Trump would lay down his life for you, or Pierre Poilievre? There's no other savior other than Jesus Christ. I cannot state that boldly and strongly and with enough conviction. You know, submission is a hard thing. It's viewed in our world, being submissive is regarded as a negative, but submitting to Christ is the most freeing thing you can possibly do, because you are submitting to the truth, to the author of all truth, to the way, the truth, and the life. You're not submitting to a liar. You're not submitting to a guy who puts on blackface and fires people because they have integrity. You're not submitting to Justin Trudeau. Trudeau serves a different master. We need to serve Christ. And then we can face whatever is coming. And there's more coming. I'm going to share one other thing. And there were actually a couple, but I'm going to, well, I'll say it quickly. Earlier today, one of the news sources I watch is called Stacklebeck, Stacklebeck, Stacklebeck Live. And it's news from a biblical perspective, and and this Eric Stacklebeck has a major focus on what's happening in the Middle East. And just today, Israel launched major attacks on targets within both Lebanon and Syria. And that there you can find Stacklebeck Live. You can watch those videos and you can see things are, we've got the situation in the Middle East blowing up. Then we have all across Canada synagogues, about hundreds of synagogues and Jewish community centers and Jewish entities were hit with bomb threats. We have the potential for terrorist action on Canadian soil. It's where I talk about all these storm clouds. We could have terrorist activity on our own soil. We could be under boil water advisories. And then the latest one, and I'll share it now, and a friend of mine on social media only just hit me with this. So hard to keep up with anything, but I network in with 1,000+ people. I've got, 4,000+ friends and followers on Facebook. So let me share this screen so you can see this video. It almost seems like I'm not a big fan. I've never seen it before, and I'm not a big fan of anyone that uses a platform like YouTube to hawk, a business. It just bugs me. But here.
Maybe you want to go to Heathrow. Maybe you want to go to Singapore, or maybe Indonesia, or Thailand, or South Korea. Any of these countries, and there's a drop in the bucket because there's so many more. They're going to be checking all the passengers now that are traveling for this, this new spread, right? So you start to ask yourself, Are we walking into a major, major problem? It's looking like we could be walking into something interesting here, to say the very.
So as everyone knows, within the last week or so, monkeypox, or mpox as it's being called now, was declared a public health emergency of international concern. And now, as per that channel, and you can fact check it, go through to those sources that he's providing, they're instituting all kinds of checks on travelers coming into countries. They're going to be surveilling them and putting them under restrictions for up to 21 days, because monkeypox is said to have a very long, up to a 21-day incubation period, meaning from the time you get infected until the time when you start to actually display symptoms of the disease can be as many as 21 days. And prior to being symptomatic, you may be contagious. And so is monkeypox, is this going to be the next thing? They say there's a new clade, a new variant. They're calling them, with monkeypox, they call them, I think there are 2 clades, and then there are subvariants, and I don't want to go down that whole rabbit hole again. But it looks to me like that could be coming. And the question I would ask is I know that monkeypox was transmitting wildly 2 years ago, back in 2022, after Pride festivals started to open up again for the first time, and there were outbreaks of monkeypox happening. And they didn't shut down. They had these, there's one in Louisiana, it's called Southern Decadence. Look at what we celebrate in this world. Look at the meaning of the word decadence. To be decadent is now considered a good thing. The world is upside down. We've exchanged truth for a lie. We call that which is bad good, and that which is good bad. We're living in biblical times. I don't want to get into, I know the YouTube game. I've watched enough of these channels, and I know the way people talk. And they mount their soapbox, and it's, listen to me, friends, we are living in biblical times. And if you, and I don't like that rhetoric. I don't like that language, but we are living in biblical times. We've exchanged truth for a lie. The New Orleans has a Pride festival. They call it Southern Decadence. And decadence is moral decay and depravity. So we're celebrating moral decay and depravity as a wonderful thing. That's the world we live in. That's where we're bringing our kids up into, to say, oh, you're decadent? Yay. No, decadence is bad, and we celebrate it. And they wouldn't shut down. They shut down small businesses, and they forced people to shelter in place, and they wouldn't let a child hug their dying parent or grandparent. That was forbidden. Can't do that. But they wouldn't shut down a gay pride festival where orgies are taking place, and it happens. People are sating their sexual desire and spreading disease, but that's okay, because it would be exclusionary to protect public health. Like, the world has gone crazy, and you, me, everyone, we've got to witness. We've got to talk to our friends. I've been talking to people more and more lately. People I just meet, at work, casual people, never met them before. And I'll often say, as we're having the conversations about the rail shutdown, about monkeypox, about all the insanity that's going on in this world, about men being women and women being men. And I said, I will tell people, and I frame it exactly this way. I say, I know it's not a popular sentiment in today's world. And it's almost considered hate speech to say this, but God loves you and wants to be in relationship with you through his son, Jesus Christ, or words to that effect. I always started out by saying, I know it's not popular, and I know it's not politically correct in today's world to talk about this, and I frame it that way, and then I go into witnessing. And I've never had a bad reaction to it. I've always, I haven't had always receptive, but no one's gotten their back up over it. They have accepted the words. A lot of times I end up hugging the person because they go, oh, you're a Christian too? And it's like, yes, brother, I am. Yes, sister, I am. So, but there are the lost sheep out there, and we are called, if you're in Christ, you are called to share this good news, to point people to the ark. Let me just read up what's being written, and then I'm going to get to bed. I start work at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I was supposed to work today, but they called me and asked me if I'd mind taking today off and working instead tomorrow. And then I'm off for 10 days in a row. So I'm going to have a front row seat while things are unfolding. Here I thought, here I thought I'd have 10 days to relax and that hopefully the world would be calm. And instead, we could be in the early days of, I know it's a little, it sounds like I'm exaggerating things, but it could be the early days of a zombie apocalypse. Who knows what's going to happen in Toronto if the grocery store shelves don't get filled up. Carrie writes, Daniel, we should all read propaganda written by Edward Bernays. Whale oil, right? Another is Conspirators' Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300 by John Coleman. Lots of great books out there. Carrie says, we must pray to Jesus for armor and discernment. My sword and my shield. Daniel Copeman is saying that Whale's reference is a great read. If you read it, mix it with 1984 and Huxley's A Brave New World, you'll get an idea of what's coming for us. I've read both. I haven't read the other ones, but I've read Brave New World and 1984. I've read 1984 at least 3 or 4 times. It's something I think, if you want to be armed for what's coming, it's a good book to read. Daniel's saying that the Committee of 300 blew his mind. Now I get it. It's also clear. And Daniel says, oh no, mpox. I smell lockdowns coming. Who knows what could happen? And they, are they going to rush through? Are they going to say that we can develop a monkeypox specific vaccine within just a few short months because we have this magic formula, mRNA, that can bend space and time and allows us to take a 10-year process and shorten it down just to weeks or months? Is that going to happen? They conditioned, warp speed is science fiction. It's not science. You cannot take a 10-year process, and science done properly is done meticulous and slow. And even then, even when science is done properly, mistakes happen. Thalidomide, Bextra, countless. Daniel Coleman says, if you don't engage in gay sex, don't worry about monkeypox. The only thing they say is that, let's say you go into a hotel room and they didn't change the linens, and someone with lesions was on that bedspread. It can spread in other ways. The question I have is, has something happened to individuals' immune systems, leaving them more prone to conditions like monkeypox, to viral infections like monkeypox and RSVs, and goodness knows what else? Has something been introduced to a large portion of the population, say within the last 2 or 3 years, that has suddenly impacted the human immune system, or at least a portion of the human immune system? That's as far as I'm willing to go, so that I don't get stepped on, but I think most will be able to read between the lines. Carrie writes, biblical for sure, the end of the age is nigh, N-I-G-H. There are 2 ways to view end times theology, which the fancy word is eschatology. End times theology, there are 2 ways to view it. Number 1 is there are ends of every age. The Roman Empire came to an end. The Jewish kingdoms came to an end. The Alexander's Greek Empire came to an end. Things do come to an end. But then, is this the end of all ends? And eventually it will have to happen. Eventually there will have to be an ultimate end. Is this the ultimate end that we're moving toward, or is this just another cyclical end? Either way, regardless all of us are facing our own personal end, and at some point we're all going to be standing before the creator of all things, and Jesus is going to be sitting in judgment. And what are you going to say to him? What is he going to say to you? How are you going to reconcile yourself? Have you denied him, or have you made him Lord of your life? Have you submitted to the creator of all things or not? And that's something that all of us have to work out through. I think Paul frames it as we all have to work out our salvation through fear and trembling, because the fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. Do not fear those who have control over this temporal life, but fear the one who sits in judgment over your eternal soul. That's the start of all wisdom. Daniel writes, welcome to the upside down. Good is evil, evil is good. Depravity runs rampant, as in the days of Lot, as in the days of Noah. Judgment is coming, and judgment belongs to God. It is not ours. So many of us want to sit in judgment. We want to, I think, I was planning before all this insanity broke down with the railways, to talk about Jordan Peterson, and he did a wonderful video where he broke down in tears, and he talked about how we have the narrative world and we have the objective world. The narrative world, the world of stories that tells us how to act, how to behave, morality, and then there's the objective, real, tangible world. And he said, and the two touch, and that point at which they touch is best represented is Jesus Christ. And he said, and strangely enough, I'm amazed at my own belief, because I believe that to be true. I've seen examples of it in my own life, he says, and he starts getting quite choked up, tearing up. And he said, but he doesn't seem willing to take that final step and walk right over and say, Jesus, you get the wheel. Take over. I'm submitting to you. And I think I understand why. I think I understand why, because he said, it terrifies me to think what would happen if you ever fully committed to that. He's terrified by it. And I think I understand why he's terrified. And I'll do that in another video. I'll show that little clip where he says this, Christ is the representation of where the narrative and the objective world touch, and why the prospect of committing to it fully, wholeheartedly, 100% is terrifying to him. That'll be another video sometime this week. And Daniel writes, watch John Rich Tucker Carlson interview. They discuss God. John Rich, he's come out with a new song that's blowing up the internet called Revelation. And he's very much a professing Christian. So I'll have to check that one out. I saw the full interview he did with Jordan Peterson, the full free interview. I'm not paying to join the Daily Wire. I hate that. I hate all this, I'll give you this much, but then if you want more, you got to pay me. I don't do that on this station, and I will not. I don't know what Cryptomeria is writing in terms of saying, or your partner cheated. That's got to be in reference to conversation that's going on amongst y'all. But thank you for watching. And crazy times, war. Israel has launched a major campaign against Lebanon and Syria today, apparently. We've got the unfolding rail situation in Canada where things could get really bad. We have airports all around the world introducing new restrictions and protocols on travelers and cargo. If you watch the rest of that video I just shared. So many economic fronts. There's so many things coming at us, climate, weather-related disasters, and this world as it was in the days of Noah. And you want to be in the ark. So may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may, even in these crazy times, the Lord can and will grant you peace. When you get into relationship with his Son, invite Jesus into your heart. Give him the wheel and get into his word. That's how you can learn more and more about who Christ is. Thank you all. Whale, Carrie, Cryptomeria, Carrie, Daniel Copeman, all of you. I know I'm leaving some out, and I hate that. And scrolling, just Sharunian was here, Animanarchy, Cryptomeria, just scrolling through. I hope I got everyone's name. If I missed anyone, I apologize. And we'll talk to you all again probably tomorrow night. Goodness knows something is always happening. God bless. Oh, and like and subscribe. You know that. Talk to you later.